I took care of the paralyzed Ethan meticulously for 2 years, and everyone thought the first thing he would do when he stood up would be to marry me. Only I asked him that night after his surgery was successful, "Do you still want to marry me?" He hesitated, and that simple answer he ultimately did not say out loud. I laughed and said, "I understand." I took off the ring and left the place I had lived for 2 years without hesitation that night. "Do you still want to marry me?" Ethan was slightly taken aback by this question, staring at his legs for a long time without speaking. The noise from outside seeped through the unclosed crack of the door. The doctor said Ethan's surgery was very successful, and he will be able to return to normal in less than half a month. I really didn't expect my brother to recover. 2 years ago, he had almost given up on himself. Thanks to my sister-in-law for not abandoning him, they must be getting married soon, so I should prepare a wedding gift early. Ethan heard these raucous blessings, but ultimately said nothing. The air was filled with an awkward atmosphere. Finally, I got up and, as usual, massaged his knee and calf. Kindly offering him a way out. "Is this strength okay?" This finally broke the awkward atmosphere. His tense body gradually relaxed, and I gently asked, as I had for the past 2 years, "Are you feeling uncomfortable?" He shook his head and replied earnestly, "No, you're better than the caregiver." I stared blankly at my hands pressing his legs. In fact, at first, I wouldn't have pressed them. It was unbearable for him to have the caregiver touch his body. Every time the caregiver arrived, he would throw a tantrum and drive him away. However, for his legs, massage was an essential thing, so I learned from the owner of the massage parlor for 3 months. From the very beginning, experimenting with the potion on myself, it was only in the end that I carefully pressed it against his leg. The first time, I only dared to press and knead while he was asleep. He had a light sleep and still noticed me. He got angry and said, "Get out." I didn't leave and pressed again according to the acupoints the massage parlor owner had given me. He couldn't move his legs and threw the pillow at my head. I remained unmoved, so he simply started throwing everything he could reach at me. Finally, there is a picture frame, inside which is a photo of him from university, one hand holding a trophy and the other fist clenched, full of vigor and ambition. As the warm blood flowed down his forehead, he looked at me, wanting to struggle to my side, but the constraints on his legs left him helpless. In the end, he covered his face and suddenly cried out loud, "Go on, leave, don't stay by my side. It's useless, I can't feel it, no matter how I try, it doesn't work." At that time, he was in despair, and I came over every day without fail to give him massages. Until his mother discovered that he had swallowed sleeping pills and hurriedly took him to the hospital. His mother had no way to deal with him, so I squatted in front of him and said, "Look at me." He obediently looked at me, and I said, "Everything will be fine, trust me." At that moment, I didn't even know where my confidence came from. From that day on, I moved into his house. Ethan's mother cried and thanked me over and over, saying how lucky she was to have me. She hesitated, and I knew what she wanted to ask. So I said, "If Ethan doesn't push me away, I'll stay by his side." But the truth is, even if he pushes me away, I won't leave. When the massage was ineffective once again, he lost his temper. Get lost, all of you. At that time, he was already in a wheelchair, and the entire bedroom was in shambles from his rampage. But the good thing was, he finally stopped throwing things at me. After he vented, I leaned closer to him and said again, "Ethan, trust me." This sentence has been repeated for 2 years. Gradually, he could feel pressure in his legs, and then he could slowly perform some simple movements. Until yesterday, when he had the surgery, the doctor was incredulous, saying the operation was very successful. If all goes well, he will be able to stand up. Ethan's mom knew the news and shoved the bank card into my hand. I stared at the bank card in a daze. These past 2 years, I wasn't just after a bank card. My friends call me sister-in-law, but the truth is only I know that I can't really be considered one. We haven't even confessed our feelings, let alone define our relationship. But fortunately, I have Ethan's words, "Sophie, as soon as my leg is better, we will get married immediately." That was during his first treatment, when the doctor tactfully expressed his regret, and I pushed him home. He began to collapse as soon as he entered the door. The once proud son of heaven suddenly fell from grace, something no one could accept. I held him tightly, and he bit down on my shoulder. He bit too deep and too hard, and now my shoulder still bears the marks of his teeth. He came to his senses after seeing the bloodstains, and said to me in a panic, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." After apologizing, I massaged his calf as usual, and he said this sentence. "No," he asked another question, "Sophie, do you have a crush on me?" I didn't take it for granted, and looking at him, I said, "Yes." He looked at me for a long while before saying he would marry me, but I didn't do all this for an equivalent exchange. I just wanted him to feel the same way I did, praying that one day he would also fall in love with me. At that moment, I got up as usual, poured the medicinal oil into my palm to warm it up, and then touched his calf. "I know he is watching me." For a long time, his voice came from above. "Sophie, you don't have to do these things anymore." I paused for a moment, but still insisted on finishing. I raised my head and once again, hopelessly asked, "Ethan, do you still want to marry me?" He seemed to want to say something but fell silent, keeping his mouth shut. I could only laugh at my own foolish hopes. But the ring on my ring finger was put on by him with his own hands. I have had a crush on him for so many years, how could I not be infatuated? I got up and washed off the ointment from my hands. The ring on my ring finger made my heart ache. He spoke from outside the door, "Sophie, you are my sister." Tears splashed into the water, and I quickly wiped them away. "Don't say things like that. Such words are too cruel for me." When I pushed open the bathroom door and stepped out, the living room was still noisy. I lowered my head to look into Ethan's eyes, and struggled to take off the ring. Actually, the ring size is wrong, it's a size smaller. I don't know if he was careless or if it was never meant for me. But I know that when it got smaller, I forced it on, and it hurt my fingers. It's just that before, I could still deceive myself that all rings were like this. When I finally took it off, my fingers felt a sense of relief, and I surprisingly regretted not taking it off sooner. Ethan's gaze flickered, and I held the ring out to him. "Here, take it back." The marks on my fingers were clear, and I added, "It's a bit smaller." He seemed to want to say something, but I waved my hand, pushing him out the door. As soon as we stepped out, the friends in the living room almost surrounded us. The young couple was whispering something, even we couldn't hear it. "Don't worry, I won't cause a scene today, I'll save that for your wedding. Let's have some fun together before we leave." Ethan's friend, as polite and measured as he is. Considering that Ethan had just undergone surgery, everyone brought juice and light food. Someone asked Ethan, "Ethan, when you're ready, we'll go skiing at Titley's, together." Ethan casually agreed, and never mentioned skiing or basketball again. His friend turned to me and said, "Sister-in-law is going too, Ethan will book your flight, you will definitely like it." Ethan looked up at me and threw the question back to me. Being rejected twice in a row, even if I have no shame, I still have my pride. I said, "You guys go ahead." But Ethan suddenly spoke up, "It doesn't matter if we go together. After all, I consider you my sister." As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent. His friend laughed and patted his head, "Ethan, what kind of joke are you making?" Immediately, more friends jumped out to mediate, "His legs are fine, but his head isn't clear. Sister-in-law, don't argue with him." This sentence was turned over amidst laughter and play, but Ethan remained silent from beginning to end. I remembered a long time ago, when a friend saw the ring on my ring finger and asked me, "Sophie, are you sure? They are not people from the same world as us. If his leg gets better, will he really marry you?" At that time, I didn't dare to say the answer out loud, and even now, I still don't dare. I know Ethan gave me the answer. No. The atmosphere of the gathering was very harmonious, with soft music playing as everyone talked about various past events. I lowered my head and searched for Tyalusai. With low recognition, it is a famous local ski resort. I couldn't understand a word they said, and it was at that moment that I vaguely understood my friend's words, "We are not from the same world." I stood up, and Ethan's gaze immediately fell on me. I returned to my own bedroom. Although I called it my bedroom, everything in it was actually arranged by Ethan's mother. I called the woman who cried and thanked me 2 years ago. I rubbed my fingertips and asked, "Auntie, about that bank card of yours?" She seemed eager for me to bring it up, and before I could finish my sentence, she immediately interjected, 6 zeros, feel free to take it, thank you for taking care of Ethan these past 2 years. I let out a heavy hum. There was nothing to tidy up, so I threw the few pieces of clothing I had into the trash can. I left the house with that card. Passing through the living room, Ethan's friend asked me, "Sister-in-law, what are you doing so late?" I didn't want to put Ethan in a difficult position, so I smiled with my eyes squinted. "I'm hungry, I'm going out to eat a bowl of wontons." They were clamoring to order takeout, but I refused. Ordering takeout would cost hundreds, it's not worth it. Ethan realized something and looked at me without blinking. I waved to the people inside the house, "I'm leaving." At 1 o'clock in the morning, I left the place I had lived for 2 years, with a bank card in hand. I suppose it wasn't a loss. I found a place to settle down. I don't have to watch over Ethan all the time, and I don't have to fear his sudden mental breakdowns at night. My body suddenly relaxed, and I couldn't adapt for a moment. Instead, I couldn't sleep, so I held a cup of water and looked at the few stars on the balcony. In the dead of night, I began to hear my own voice. I thought I would be sad and heartbroken. But there wasn't. I just touched the red mark that had been pressed into my ring finger and began to think about when it would fade. That night, I only felt that the wind was a bit cool and the stars in the sky were somewhat bright. Ethan called early the next morning. After I connected, there was no sound on his end. In the end, I was the one to speak up. "Is there something you need?" He tentatively said, "Sophie, I want to eat steamed buns with sweetened condensed milk in the morning." After his lower body was paralyzed, he refused to eat. I tried one thing after another, but he kept his mouth shut and wouldn't take a bite. Finally, my tears fell to the ground, pleading, "Just take a bite, you can't go without eating." Maybe he was annoyed by my crying, so in the end, he frowned and bit into the custard bun. He didn't like the ones from outside, so I taught myself how to make them. But everything from yesterday is still fresh in my memory, and I still remember his silence. I said calmly, "Ethan, I'm leaving." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while, and I didn't know what to say, so I simply hung up. There was an astonishing amount of money left in the bank card, and I was stunned as I counted those zeros. After counting several times, I still couldn't believe it. Carefully putting away my bank card, I finally understood my best friend's words, "You are not people from the same world." Indeed, my parents are just ordinary people. They know that I take care of my paralyzed boyfriend and have come to see me. At that time, Ethan's mom was very hospitable, and they were at a loss for words. When they got home, they said to me, "Wow, that was a bit difficult." But they don't stop me, just wave their hands, "It's fine, go ahead and try, at worst, I'll go home." It is only now, 2 years later, that I vaguely understand Ethan's mother's actions. The exquisite dishes on the table surprised even Ethan, let alone the two ordinary people from the county. Ethan's mom warmly entertained, but it was clearly for my parents to see. We are not from the same world. I casually bought a new house with that card, not reducing a single cent. Half a month later, I unexpectedly saw Ethan at the coffee shop at the entrance of the community, busy with renovations and other things. He was pushed and teased by his friends. "Ethan, if you don't go after Sophie, I won't think highly of you. Apologize to your sister-in-law, who else could be a sister-in-law if not her? I only acknowledge her." Ethan hadn't been out for 2 years, his skin pale, and the sunlight made his face dazzlingly white. He heard his friend teasing him half playfully, half insistently, and he shrugged his lips in a perfunctory manner, "Let's talk about it when Sophie shows up in front of me." Unfortunately, I was at the table right behind them. I instinctively dodged to the side upon hearing those words, but the next second, a friend coming out of the coffee shop cheerfully shouted my name. "Sophie." She ran over to share with me, "There is a cake you like today." Ethan and his table fell silent at once, and I watched as they followed my friend's figure, to see me. My friend placed the cake in front of me and, seeing the sudden change in my expression, asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" She instinctively became tense, because of my expression. Then I realized it was a group of them making a fuss. Why should I let them affect my mood? I changed my expression, "It's nothing, sit down, you still remember that I like this cake." Just this one sentence opened the floodgates. The distance was too close, and the voices from Ethan's table inevitably carried over. "It's destined by heaven, Ethan, you need to apologize. With such a good wife, I don't believe you'll find another one. I'm telling you, if you don't make it clear, you won't have any friends left." I am familiar with every sound. When Ethan was bedridden, they came to see him one by one. There was a girl who had a crush on Ethan. When she went into the room to see Ethan, he deliberately spilled water on her skirt. The weather is hot, the dress is thin, and when it gets wet, the skin can be seen clearly. The girl stands awkwardly in place, and I found a shawl to hand to her. Ethan's eyes were cold as he looked at her and sneered, "You still want to like me like this?" The girl's eyes were red, and I gently closed the door. After she came out, she looked up at me proudly and said, "I don't want to like Ethan anymore, he's not worth it." After saying that, she lifted her damp skirt and left, but halfway there, she turned back. She watched me clean up the water stains from her skirt in the living room and awkwardly said, "But you're really nice, thank you. Don't like Ethan anymore, he's not good enough for you." After saying that, she quickly ran away, and later we became friends, exchanging gifts during holidays and festivals. The people around Ethan are not bad. I was lost in thought while listening to my friend's words. It was only when Ethan's voice sounded that I realized he was standing next to me. He called my name, "Sophie." I instinctively looked up, and he frowned, as if he suddenly couldn't bring himself to speak after seeing me. His friends behind him were teasing, "Ethan, apologize and get your sister-in-law back." Upon hearing this, Ethan's brows furrowed even tighter. But now I don't need his apology. Being in a relationship is originally a matter of mutual consent. Moreover, I took the bank card away, and I still haven't figured out the zeros after the numbers. One cannot have it both ways. Ethan stood in front of me in a daze, and I spoke as I looked at his conflicted expression. "No need, I don't need an apology." He breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, turned halfway around, and looked at me to ask, "When are we going back?" Maybe I didn't make it clear last time, so this time I will explain it more clearly. I'm not going back. Ethan didn't know what he was thinking, staring at me intently, and finally let out a sound of acknowledgement. He turned and went back to his desk, where his familiar friends were watching the commotion. "How is it? Did you get back together? When are you getting married? When will I give out wedding candies?" "Not getting married." Ethan's voice was light, tinged with a hint of impatience. The table full of people suddenly fell silent, and Ethan repeated himself, his voice instinctively rising. "Why would anyone think I would marry her? Just because I am grateful to her, does that mean I have to marry her? I've said it before, I see her as a sister. This is the third time. One shouldn't take advantage of kindness." I simply stood up and said to his friend, "You misunderstood about the marriage, I'm just taking care of Ethan for money." Ethan looked up at me with a heavy gaze, and I met his eyes openly. I looked at his tightly furrowed brows and said, "You don't have to treat me like a sister, just a stranger is fine." During the time I was taking care of Ethan, there were moments when I couldn't help but wonder if Will would have fallen in love with Clark if he hadn't had the accident. At first, I thought he would, but later I thought he wouldn't. I am caught in a back-and-forth struggle between yes and no, and in the end, this question still has no answer. I don't know their answers, but I know mine and Ethan's. Ethan fell in love, making a big deal out of it. He officially announced it in his social circle, openly introducing the girl to his friends. It made it hard for me not to know. I ran into Ethan and his girlfriend at a party. There were too many mutual friends, and no one expected to run into each other. When Ethan walked in with his girlfriend, the friend beside me tightened their grip on my hand. After all, they had all seen how I took care of Ethan during those 2 years. I smiled at her reassuringly and openly went to look at the girl that Ethan had brought in. Nothing special. 2 eyes and a mouth. Ethan also saw me and casually chose a corner at the entrance to sit down. He just ordered a fruit platter from the waiter as he took his seat. When the fruit plate arrived, he placed it in front of the girl, who smiled with her eyes curved. She leaned in and whispered in his ear. The girl happily shared with him, but he wouldn't even lower his head, his gaze lazily fixed on the fruit platter as he listened to her talk, and anyone could see his obvious lack of interest. If this is what he looks like when he's in love, then it's actually quite boring. I wasn't stimulated, but my friend was. She drank too much and insisted on introducing me to a boyfriend, and I patiently explained that she was drunk. As I helped her out the door, Ethan's girlfriend and I exchanged glances. "Sister, I recognize you." I paused, and she continued, "Thank you for taking care of Ethan." I nodded and helped my friend, wanting to leave. The girl was eager to win a round against me, not noticing the suddenly quiet atmosphere around us, hurriedly getting up to stand in front of me. But if I had been by Ethan's side at that time, I could have done it too. The temper that can erupt at any moment, the cups thrown around carelessly, and the sleep that cannot be deep. She said she could do it too? I let out a light laugh. Anyone can say anything, but there is no such if. But it's not certain. What if Ethan's leg has problems again? She could try to see if she can take care of it. Ethan's expression had already changed early on, and his friend stepped in to ease the atmosphere. I also joked to lighten the mood, when that time comes, it would be better to spend some money to hire a caregiver. Just that one sentence made Ethan angry. Bang. The glass cup hit the table heavily, and I turned my face to look over. He frowned and impatiently said, "What's the point of bringing it up now that it's all in the past?" But what can't be mentioned now that it's all in the past? It's he who doesn't want to be brought up, he considers it a humiliation. The next day, when the friend woke up and heard about this, she couldn't help but scold. "What does she mean, showing off right in your face?" She flaunted while I counted the zeros in my bank account balance, surprisingly not angry. It was then that I realized how powerful money can be. But my friend thinks I'm just putting on a brave face, and once again mentioned, "Ethan is in a relationship now. Do you need me to help you find a boyfriend? With your conditions, finding one would be a matter of minutes." Nowadays, everyone is used to fast-paced relationships, but I still want to slow down, to meet someone and gradually understand love, exchanging sincerity for sincerity. I politely declined, "No, thank you." My friend firmly believes that I am heartbroken over Ethan and still waiting for him because of my rejection. She scolded Ethan on the side, and I laughed and joined in for a couple of insults. As the days slowly passed, I learned baking and flower arrangement. During this time, there were certainly people who came to curry favor with me, but when I suggested that we get to know each other slowly, they retreated as if facing a great enemy. Less than half a month later, I saw the news that the other party had found a girlfriend. My friend laughed and called me a professional matchmaker. I also smile. I am really not in a hurry. When taking care of Ethan, I was truly devoted to him, but now I want to focus on myself first. I want to empty my heart before accepting others. I think the people I will accept in the future will also be as sincere as I am. I still look forward to genuine hearts meeting genuine hearts. Ethan broke up, and within a week, he was dating again. Once again, it was announced with great fanfare, and friends gradually accepted the fact that Ethan and I were impossible. I learned to dive like Karak, taking my gear every day to find fun sea areas. Half a year away from City A, news of Ethan intentionally reached my ears. He broke up again, perhaps he had an epiphany, and suddenly stopped. Ethan's friends hinted to me in a joking manner that Ethan is now single, urging me to come back. As the new year approached, I had to go home. But I didn't expect that everyone would be waiting for me as soon as I got off the plane. Ethan's friends all came and teased me, "Sophie, you've gotten a bit darker." They didn't distance themselves from me just because Ethan and I weren't together. A friend sent me a message after I clarified things with Ethan that day. "Sophie, I want to be friends with you even without Ethan." But I didn't expect that Ethan would come too. He stood far away, lost in thought. But in the end, he still took a step forward and said to me, "Long time no see." 6 months ago, his attitude towards me was tinged with subtle disdain, but now he actually greets me like a friend, saying it's been a long time. I politely replied, "It's been a long time." He hesitated before speaking, "My leg." He was interrupted halfway by my ringtone, and I smiled at them apologetically. I answered the phone, and as soon as it connected, the young man's voice was bright. "Sister, where are you?" I was also affected by his voice. "I'll send you my location, don't worry, take your time coming over." After hanging up the phone, my friends gathered around me and decided on a place to eat. I waited for them to finish speaking before asking, "Can we add one more person?" They were all surprised. "Add who?" "Add what kind of person?" The orange windbreaker shone brightly, and when I told him to slow down, he still ran all the way to my side. He directly took my hand and said clingily, "I miss you so much." His movement was too quick for my friends to react. I wanted to take the box from his hands, but he wouldn't let me. That's when I introduced my friend, Alex, my boyfriend. Sometimes, fate is so strange, it suddenly arrives at a time you least expect. Alex confessed to me, and I, as usual, said to take it slow. In fact, I had already prepared for him to back down after 2 weeks, but I didn't expect him to hold on for so long. By the time I came to my senses, his presence was everywhere around me. I am not young anymore this year. When the people around me hear me say to take it slow, they think I am just stringing them along. But young people won't think that. When they hear, "take it slow," they really mean to take it slow. Sincere and passionate. It's well hidden. If it weren't for this trip back, we probably wouldn't have seen it. "No way, you have to treat this meal." It's not that I hid it well enough, but rather that I never thought he would come back with me. I missed my flight because of traffic. When I rescheduled for the next flight, he pitifully messaged me, "Why haven't you arrived yet? I hate you." I only then realized that he bought the seat next to me to surprise me, but we missed each other by such a twist of fate. He had landed early and was waiting at the airport, and we had just met up. My friends are still teasing, and I smile as I raise my hand, I'll treat. Alex mimicked my gesture and raised his hand, imitating my tone as he said, I invite. He was outgoing and quickly became familiar with his friends. When they sat down at the restaurant, there was one more person, Alex, and the number of seats was just right. It was then that someone noticed Ethan was missing. They called over, and Ethan's voice was unclear, his leg suddenly hurt, and he went to the hospital. In this situation, how could they possibly sit still? So sudden? Is everything okay? What did the doctor say? It's fine, the doctor said I just need to rest. You all go ahead and eat, I'll treat you next time when I get back. Although Ethan said that, the previous matters were too serious, and his family background was there. Seeing their troubled faces, I took the initiative to give them a way out. You can go check on Ethan, this meal can be eaten anytime. Just right, Alex and I are tired, and we want to go back and rest. Alex was not angry about the sudden change, he cheerfully sent the person off. I took Alex home, and along the way, he excitedly pointed at the flowers and plants by the roadside, asking questions left and right. He always had endless things to say every day, even stopping to chat with the dogs by the road. When I got home, no one could have imagined that the person from the hospital was standing at my front door. Alex paused while holding my hand. He saw Ethan step forward and take the initiative to speak. Are you Ethan, brother? His voice was filled with laughter, and he appeared particularly friendly, even calling him brother. I instinctively glanced at him. Ethan smiled at him but did not answer his words. He looked at me and called out, Sophie. His gaze fell on me. Long time no see. He said it again. Alex was ignored but showed no signs of unhappiness, obediently standing beside me while holding my hand. Ethan wanted to say something else, but I stepped forward to interrupt him and took the initiative to introduce Alex to him. "This is my boyfriend, Alex." Ethan smiled slightly at the words and after a moment, replied softly, "Mm." After he finished speaking, he said, "My leg might have a problem." Alex timely interjected, anxiously concerned, "If your leg is an issue, you should hurry to the hospital." He patiently asked, "Do you need me to call an ambulance for you?" After taking out his phone, he explained seriously, "After all, my girlfriend is not a doctor." Ethan ignored him and called out to me, "Sophie." Alex didn't pay him any attention either and looked at me directly, asking, "Sister, why isn't he talking to me?" How would I know why Ethan was ignoring him? Ethan called out to me again, "Sophie." Alex chased after me, leaning his face close to mine and asking, "Sister, why?" I pushed his head away and said, "I don't know." He leaned his face closer. I can never resist him. I instinctively took out the house key to open the door, only realizing suddenly when I stood in front of the door that Ethan was still beside me. Alex did not hold back, "Sister, you forgot that brother Ethan is still at the door." Ethan's expression nearly faltered, and when he noticed my gaze on him, he finally spoke, "Shall we talk?" Alex shook my hand, "Sister, what do you want to say to him?" It was at this moment that I finally realized his unusual green tea attitude from the very beginning. I responded slowly, following his lead, "I won't say anything to him." After saying that, I closed the door, and Alex came in and hugged me. "I'm jealous." I patted his head, "What are you jealous about?" When I first started dating him, I told him everything without reservation. He knew all about my past with Ethan, so what was there to worry about? "I hate that you are a blockhead." I don't know how to respond, but before I could answer, he became happy again. "Blockheads are great." He spoke in a muffled and soft voice, "Others' goodwill goes unnoticed." But that night, Ethan still called. "Sophie, do you know your boyfriend has a 4-year first love? Ethan is really hospitalized, and his condition is unknown. Previously, he said he would take care of his ex-girlfriend, one after another, going to the hospital. My friends even bet on how many days they could last. The result was 2 days. Most left the hospital after just a few hours. My friend said he deserves it and repeatedly told me not to be soft-hearted. Of course, I won't be soft-hearted. Ever since I got that card, I haven't thought about looking back. One night, Ethan's mom suddenly sent a message, "Sophie, can you meet with Ethan alone?" When she messaged me, Alex was right beside me. I seriously declined, "Sorry, my boyfriend might mind." She called, pleading desperately, "I beg you, I'll give you whatever amount you want. Ethan can't not eat. I'm begging you, just let him eat." Why would such a thing happen to Ethan? She was incoherent, her tone breaking down. From her fragmented words, I inferred that Ethan's hospitalization was not a trivial matter. Aunt Jo cried out, "Why does this kind of thing have to happen to us? Please help me, he can't go without food." Alex sat quietly to the side, not wanting to make things difficult for me, and generously said, "It's nothing to meet once, you don't have to worry about me. But it doesn't matter anymore. Why must I meet this one face? And as long as I meet one face, they will use this excuse to make me meet countless others." I still insisted to the woman who was breaking down, "I'm sorry, I don't owe you anything. I have my life to live, and so does Ethan." The next day, I learned from a friend that Ethan had a problem with his leg. The low-probability event that the doctor had mentioned had happened to him. After he stood up, his muscles atrophied, and he was likely to return to his previous life. During that time, I stayed with him, but he found it hard to endure. Not to mention the feeling of getting back on my feet. Now there's another problem, being told I might be paralyzed. I didn't reply to that message, and Ethan suddenly called. I thought he was calling to ask about the massage and the ointment. But no, he said, "Sophie, do you believe that you and your little boyfriend won't last long?" I didn't answer, and he continued, "How about a bet?" He said, "Let's bet on your boyfriend's loyalty." I don't know how to bet on loyalty. But I know that as long as there is the thought of testing, trust will immediately crumble. I won't accompany you in this boring gamble. But he didn't care about my rejection. He said one last thing, just wait and see, all men are the same. I treated this matter as an interlude and moved on. In the following days, due to the new year, I was continuously busy. Alex wanted to hang out with me here and asked me a few times, but I didn't have the time. He looked dejected, disappointment written all over his face. Finally realizing that I was really busy, I started wandering around the city alone. He has never lacked friends in his character, so I am not worried about him making friends. Sure enough, in just 2 days, he was already able to go out with great enthusiasm. In the morning, he would leave before I had a chance to go out. Sometimes, when I was awake, I would just happen to run into him, other times, still asleep, I could only see the notes he left when I went to the living room. As the notes piled up, my unease gradually crept in, only to be realized later. What is he doing? Who is he meeting? I remembered how he made a fuss when I was on a business trip for a week, asking me what I was doing. For the first time, I understood his thoughts. I am too slow to warm up. I always notice the other person's thoughts half a beat too late. I want to have a good chat with him. But before I could find the time to talk to him, Ethan sent a photo with a new number. Alex was laughing happily with a girl in a coffee shop. In an instant, unease surged in my heart. He told me in the morning that he was meeting a friend. Ethan sent a message, look, all men are the same. I don't know why he is sending these messages, he keeps sending more photos, one after another. He said, do you guess he will come home tonight? I deleted and blocked him. I sat at home, hesitantly asking Alex what he was doing. He replied quickly, having dinner with friends. I ultimately didn't ask, when will you be back? Around 10 o'clock in the evening. Then I will wait until 10 o'clock in the evening. Time passed second by second as I anxiously waited on the sofa. It was 11 o'clock, and Alex still hadn't returned, not even sending a single message. Ethan changed his phone and called me. So, what do you think? Aren't all men the same as I said? But I don't know what his intention is in doing this. So what if Alex really betrays me? If he betrays me, then I'll just break up with him and like the next one. It's that simple. I have never lost the courage to try just because I got hurt. When the girl who liked Ethan before told me that Ethan was not good enough for me, I instinctively doubted it. How could someone so kind-hearted and with countless virtues possibly be unworthy of me? Now, as I look back from the perspective of an observer on the 2 years I took care of him, he had a bad temper and was self-destructive, possessing the most advanced medical equipment yet unwilling to try. Now he even wants to drag me down with him. He truly does not deserve me. I waited at home until 1 in the morning. Alex still hadn't returned. But why should I wait? Why should I believe Ethan's words instead of asking myself? Why should our matters be interfered with by Ethan? I put on my coat and pushed open the door. Just as I went downstairs, I happened to run into Alex at the bottom of the building. He got out of the car, and sitting in the back seat was a girl, the one from the photo. He saw that I was suddenly a bit at a loss and called my name to explain, Sophie, I came back a little late. The woman in the car also saw me and waved her hand at me. The car was about to leave, and I stopped it before it could drive away. The driver scolded me for not knowing the danger, and I tapped on the car window. The woman revealed a beautiful face and asked me, what's wrong? I asked her, are you Alex's first love? She hurriedly explained, you must be Alex's current girlfriend. Please don't misunderstand, I'm just here on a business trip. I interrupted her, yes or no? Alex realized I was angry and hurried over to explain, there was traffic on the way, so I got back a bit late. He said 10 o'clock in the evening, but now it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Is there traffic on the road for several hours? I asked again, yes or no? Yes. During our relationship, Alex never told me about this first love from beginning to end. Some people might not care, but I do. I broke up with Alex on the spot. The girl hurriedly got out of the car, trying to persuade me, following behind me, speaking one sentence after another. I didn't mean to disturb you all. I just happened to run into Alex, who was also traveling here, so we had a meal together. We really didn't do anything, you can check the surveillance. The more she spoke, the less I was moved. In the end, it was Alex who spoke up, shut up. She stood there, at a loss, and Alex stopped and said to her, you can go first. He watched the girl leave, then turned and caught up with me, following me home and blocking the door, not allowing me to enter. We need to talk. I looked up at him, no need. When I initially agreed to date him, I mentioned that both of us should be sincere with each other. I told him everything in detail, but he concealed the fact of his first love and hid that he had dinner with her. I am not a wooden person. I just chose to be wooden because I am with him. I don't want to chat and laugh with others, nor do I want to engage in their topics or jokes. I choose to ignore others' goodwill and treat them coldly. Let's just end it like this. This relationship was announced quickly and ended just as fast. A friend asked me to bring Alex along to hang out, and I said openly, we broke up. My friend sighed and insisted on introducing me to a boyfriend, but I still refused. I still hope for someone sincere, if not, I'd rather be alone. Ethan's mom still calls me, asking me to go see Ethan. I still haven't agreed, sending her all the recipes and prescriptions, and booked a flight back home. This time I didn't miss the flight, I was sitting in my seat when Alex sat next to me. He smiled with his eyes squinted and said to me, sister, this time we didn't miss it. But he didn't even want to understand why I was angry, he just wanted to reconcile with me. I was wrong, let's make up. Forgive me. Let's be good together. He repeated these words over and over. When he pursued me back then, I could ponder over a punctuation mark for a long time, now he isn't even willing to explain properly. Moreover, Ethan's mom just wanted to meet me, and I have repeatedly refused. I really can't think of any reason for him to meet with his first love. If they don't get back together, then so be it. After getting off the plane, he stood in place. When I turned to look while hailing a taxi, he had indeed already left. A sincere and passionate child, his heart is unsettled. But it doesn't matter, at least I enjoyed his enthusiasm. I will still eagerly embark on the next chapter of love.